All right. Welcome to another edition of How to Change. Got a special guest today, a friend of mine that I've known for almost 15 years now, Bob Caruso. I'm going to ask Bob to introduce himself in a second. I didn't do this intentionally, but I started by changing my background. I had to do it yesterday for a call that I was on, never changed it back. So there you go. We've already made change this morning, Bob. Um, Got to try, right? Got to
Yeah,
try.
absolutely.
So let's start with a little bit of your background. Obviously, I know it, but I think it's important for the audience, for the listeners, to know a little bit about why you and I are talking this morning and what your experience is around change.
Absolutely. So as Mike said, we've known each other for a few years now. But prior to that, my entire career really has been focused in the area of change, of transformation at some point, right? Quick version of my life, right? Started out in the military in the Air Force as a fighter jack, got out, went to aerospace. And in aerospace, I joined aerospace at the end of the Cold War, which was a time of major transition for the aerospace business. And as a result, I began a large part of my business career, my professional career, in a transformational environment, and was asked to take on a role at that time in the early 90s to lead what we now call transformation efforts, what we used to call organizational redesign efforts, uh, to change the business. And from there, joined Price Waterhouse, which then became Price Waterhouse Coopers, and have been doing this work for nearly 35 years. It's been fun and it's focused on change. What I like to say about my approach to change is it's a little different, uh, because I call my approach to it customer focused change, with the customer at the center of the change effort at all times. It's a little different, a little different. So I've been doing this a while. As I said, Price Waterhouse Coopers, Deloitte. I spent time at JD Power running their voice of the customer practice, building a business there, then joining Tribridge. Uh, and now I'm in a little firm called Orchid Black as a managing partner.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. So, given the experience and in particular the tenure, right, and the way that the world has changed in the 35 years or so that you've been doing this, what, today, forget the past, but today, what does organizational change management mean to you? What is that?
Uh, org change is this effort of transformation, moving from one point to another, from current state to future state, right? That's what it is today. That's what it always has been, really. The question then goes to what is org change? Well, org change is a holistic approach to transformation at its core today. And what's different today, if there's anything different today about org change, that it is supported by technologies that were not available when I started, right? Uh, Back when org change became a thing, we didn't call it org change, right? Even the names have changed over time, right? Org redesign, and then it went to transformation work, and then it went to organizational redesign, and then organizational change, and then over time came to this OCM thing, this org change management thing. But the tools have gotten better. The technology to support it has gotten better. So today, it's a very holistic approach to moving an organization from point A to point B with objectives and goals on the point B side, right? What are you trying to achieve? And this goes to my perspective around customer focused change. I work with a lot of clients, have worked with a lot of clients who change just because someone says we need a new toy, right?
Mhm.
We need a new tool, and so we're going to change, and we're going to implement this new tool just for the sake of implementing a new tool because they think it's kind of neat. Uh, and that's not a good reason to change. That's never a good reason to change, right? There's got to be a different reason to change an organization. So Short answer to your question is, what is organizational change today? It's taking an organization from point A to point B, which incorporates not just the people side of things, right? Which is typically where you say, hey, org change is all about people. And very often it's about training and communications and stakeholder management. Yes, and it's also about ensuring that strategic goals are integrated into the transformation. Yes, and ensuring that leadership is committed to the outcome, not bought in, not aligned, committed to the outcome. And that commitment then has to drive those key metrics and key goals of change to the endpoint. That's what change management is today, right? It's making all that happen and having an underlying foundation of tools that make it easier for the organization to transition, since most organizations today are virtual.
So,
And go ahead.
sorry to interrupt, but not surprisingly, again, you and I have known each other for a while, right? When I think about things, I tend to think about, well, you got people, you got process, you got technology, kind of the holy trinity, if you will, whatever
Yep.
whatever you whatever you want to call it. It's got lots of names, right? You talked about technology and the change in technology, and I want to come back to that in a little bit. And you talked about people. Can we talk about process a little bit, and
Yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
how you view process and process's role in change, or change's role in process? I'm not sure which one's the chicken and which one's the egg.
Well, let's think about that, right? The objective, as I kind of laid out, the objective is to drive an organization from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
And there are strategic goals you want to achieve at point B, whatever that might be. Process, the way that things are done, right? The way that things are done are crucial to all of that. So you're changing the way things are done. In order to change the way things are done, right? The actions you take, the policies, procedures, the physical actions that every human takes to get whatever it is done that needs to get done are the process changes, right? It's that holistic approach that says, okay, I got humans. I have different ways that I want them to work and to achieve a task. And I'm going to support it with some level of technology that will help them do that job better. So when we look at a change program, if you will, you need to look at it completely holistically. That process change, right? The strategic goals that are driving the change. I want to grow the business by 30% in 3 years. Super. I want to do that by implementing these three new technologies and by splitting into industry segments and by. Great. Super. Now, how are you going to do that? And what's the plan to do that? And that change plan is a full transformation plan. I'll give you a great example. I spent the last 2 years working with a major enterprise, a global enterprise, big business. And the point there was to make their supply chain more efficient. They wanted to really turn it into an environment where they weren't keeping a lot of inventory. They were moving inventory fast. They were moving raw materials fast. They could forecast better. They could run their assembly lines better. Okay, great. Everyone wants to do that if you're in the manufacturing business, right? You want to be efficient. You don't want to waste time, waste money on things you're not going to use. Super. I got into this transformation program because phase one had problems. And the problems they had were they didn't worry about the people. They just threw the tech in, changed the process, and said, hey, do it this way. And it fell right on its focus.
Sure.
And they missed an entire stakeholder group.
It's funny to me, the simplest analogy that I ever heard relative to change management, and I don't remember where I saw or heard it, was it's a three-legged stool. And you need all three legs. You need people, you need process, you need technology. And if you ignore any of those three, you're going to have a problem. Um,
Yep.
And I want to come, like I said, I want to come back to the technology piece in a little bit, but I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And I think, for me, when we're doing change, for me, it's that balance of the three, which in my mind, and again, I like to simplify things because I'm a simple person, it's trying to understand the organization to be able to predict where you think the biggest challenge is going to be. Is it a people problem? Is it a process problem? Is it equal? Or do I need to give more attention to one or the other? Or do they really have an underlying technology issue that has to be fixed before they can do this, right? If it's in the way. And but to me, that's the first part is trying to understand the organization well enough to know where we should be worried. And then every organization, every group of people, every team, organizational history, all of those things are different. So it's I've gotten to the point now where I tell my team that I don't let my team use the term best practices, because what's good for organization A is not necessarily good for organization B. Now, you can have
That's right.
recommended practices. You can talk about, this is what we've done before in other orgs, this is what
Yeah.
we've seen work, in those things. But to say best, to me, I think implies that there's only one answer. And I feel like the biggest part of organizational change is the understanding of that particular organization and what they're trying to do and how to get from point A to point B, and B, understanding that it's never going to go the way that it was planned, and that you have to evolve and adapt along the process, and the organization has to be fully prepared for that. So just I wanted to add that into what you're saying, because it
No,
was,
I agree,
I
Mike. I
immediately
don't
thought about the
use
three-legged stool.
yeah, and I don't use the word. I haven't used the word best practice for decades. It's leading practice. To your point, right? Whatever the leading practice is for your organization, but there, because, oh, by the way, best practices change on a daily basis because new stuff happens. So what was a best practice yesterday isn't a best practice tomorrow. So you just don't know. You're right on target. And I would add a leg,
Okay.
right? The three-legged stool: people, process, tech, customer. And the reason that I add customer in there is that whether it's an internal customer or an external customer, that customer is super important. And it's often the leg that's forgotten. Is we'll work with clients, and you work with clients in a change program, and you ask them, how's this going to impact your customers? What's the impact that this is going to have on your customers? Oh, by the way, they pay the bills.
So
And
I got to ask you a question, because the way that it was described to me, and you'll love this analogy, is that the customer is the seat. Because if
okay,
you forget the seat, what happens with the leg? It's not
they
a
don't
good
work.
thing. It's
They
not
don't
a good
work.
thing, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and and because at the end of the day, right, every organization exists to serve some customers. To your point, internal and external. Obviously,
Internal and external.
your revenue is coming from your external, but if you don't have your internal act together, you're going to have a problem. But the analogy that I heard was that the customer was actually the seat versus another leg. I think you can argue either way, but I like the way that it was described to me, because the point is that all of those things are kind of aligned towards, whether it's improving the customer experience or getting more customers, or ideal customers, whatever that is.
Mhm.
The customer kind of sits on top, is the way that it was explained to me.
I'll buy
um
that. Yeah. I'll buy
so I don't know,
so
but to your
but it's
point,
crucial.
yeah, exactly, you can't, again, if I'm building a stool, two legs don't work, got to have at least three, could have more than three, right? But I got to have a seat, or what's the purpose of the stool?
Yep, exactly right.
So
And so I agree with everything that you're saying, right? And so the agility of a change program is crucial, which is why in a lot of cases you can't use rote processes. Your initial assessment, when you do your initial change impact assessment, to your point where you mentioned that, you come in and figure out where's the biggest impact going to be in the business, and where are some of the challenges we're going to hit, and are they process challenges, are they technology challenges, are they people challenges? You finish that assessment, and then you adjust, right? That's your first adjustment. And one of the things that I always believe is a plan is always a draft. It's never done, because it can't be done. The the changes in the business are constant. The changes in the external environment are constant. And so whatever you think is a great change plan day one needs work day 30, may need a complete adjustment day 45. And so the agility is crucially important when you're dealing with a change program.
Yeah, I don't remember where I first saw this. I think it was just a couple years ago, not that long ago. I don't know when he said it, but I just laugh because, I don't think anybody would ever think of Mike Tyson as a philosopher, right? But I love his quote. The quote that I heard was that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right?
That's correct.
And I think for change management, that's the point. Like, something is going to happen along the way that is going to force the plan to change.
That's right.
Doesn't mean we're changing where we're trying to get to, but something along the way, could be people, process, or technology, or some combination that's going to, force us to evolve the plan. And to your point, it's kind of, and you're a pilot, right? One of my partners, Chuck, likes to use the analogy a lot of time when you're trying to go along that trajectory, right? How often are you off course versus how often are you on course? And the important is the course corrections to get you to the target. It's not so much, obviously if you're off too much, you got a problem, but you don't have to be locked into a plan and say this plan can't deviate. We've got to execute this plan exactly the way that it is. That's kind of foolish. You have to adapt and evolve as you go. You just can't lose sight of the target along the way. So
100%. And the other component of this that we often deal with is, so if we're talking about change, and we talk about it almost like uh, it's a unique skill set. It's a
mhm.
unique activity. My view is it's not. That it's fully integrated into everything that happens when you're dealing with any kind of a movement from point A to point B. We call it change. Okay. You call it transformation. Okay. You can call it whatever you want. Right. But the reality is, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve from where you start to where you're going requires a level of, I don't like to call it management either, right? Requires a level of engagement with the business to achieve those goals.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, say, oh, gee, who is your change management team? Well, everybody's on the change management team. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that we'll have tools that are specifically designed to deal with issues around people, deal with challenges. But at the core, change management is risk management. That's all that it is. You're managing the risk of failure, and you're looking for potential speed bumps, black holes, and you're trying to stay ahead. You mentioned this earlier. You're trying to stay ahead of the game. So I want to be able to see that speed bump far enough in advance so that I can get rid of it. I can remove the speed bump, or I can go around the speed bump. And I don't fall in that 10-foot sinkhole because I see it and I know how to get around it, over it, or build a bridge across it.
So with that in mind, I promised earlier I want to come back to technology for a point and really just get your perspective, because this is
Okay.
something that I struggle with, and I'll try not to um, predispose the answer too much. But when I think about the advances in technology, I guess from your perspective, do you think that with all of the changes in technology, whether you want to say it's made it easier, it's made it better, it's made it faster, like how do you feel like technology, the evolution of technology has impacted the change management process?
It's made it different.
Okay.
Uh, the In order for things to work out effectively 20 years ago, you needed to be in the same room. You couldn't do the work you needed to do virtually.
Hmm.
The very first project I worked on back in 1996 was a global project. Now we didn't have any of this tech, right? We had 120 people across the globe. working on one project. We had to bring them all in,
Mhm.
right? We had to at least bring them all together once to get everyone aligned and to see everyone. And we sent them out, and then we needed to have leads. I needed to have change leads in each one of those countries to stay engaged, to keep people engaged. Today, because of some of the virtual technologies we have, like Teams as an example, right? When you're looking at Microsoft Teams, you can do a lot of that work far more effectively without ever leaving the comfort of your office or your home because you can get people in a room. You can have facilitated sessions. You can do that work face to face and see expressions, see people.
Mhm.
You can write on a whiteboard. You don't have to physically be in a room together, which is incredibly valuable because that makes it so much easier to deal with risks and challenges as they arise because you can just pop on a Teams call. You can, hey, let's get together like now, and boom, you're working on it. So from that perspective, I think collaborative technologies have really, really made the work easier to accomplish.
Okay.
Uh, it also makes the work a little challenging, a little more challenging because you don't see each other as often physically. Um, so it's a little bit of both, but I'm really happy with where the collaborative technologies have come and where they're going. That's super important to drive change along, right? Because it's a lot easier to say, hey, look, we need to modify our approach on this. Get together, modify the approach, put it up on Teams or whatever tool you want to use, and everyone now has access to it. A wonderful thing, as opposed to emailing stuff to 14 different people, hoping everybody saw it, and uh, and trying to get people into a physical meeting in a physical location, which will then take 3 weeks to organize before everybody gets there. So it's really been
Okay.
helpful, I think,
Okay. All right.
in driving change forward.
I want to be cognizant of your time and obviously the listeners' time as well. So I one more question, and this is I'm going way off plan here, if you will, just because even though you and I have known each other for a long time, I just found out this morning when we were getting ready for the show that you wrote a book,
I
and the
did,
book is behind you, and it's visible to the listener behind you,
back there
and
somewhere.
it is. And so, when I could be completely wrong because I haven't read the book. I'm about to, but I haven't read the book. So tell me a little bit about what the book is about, because when I'm looking at the title, I'm like, this could be related to change, Bob.
Well, the title of the book is "Beware the Shiny Object."
Seems change
19
related.
might be uh, 19 nuggets of business wisdom. So what I've done is I've kind of accrued together 19 and a half pieces of wisdom that I've brought to clients over the years, uh, and using some pithy phrases. Uh, to so each chapter, there are obviously 19 and a half chapters, is a unique topic. The first one is
Awesome.
beware the shiny object. And my point around beware the shiny object is beware the shiny object. Oftentimes, businesses get very focused on shiny objects, which then forces them to start a change program, which then drives a bunch of risk into the business if they don't do their homework, which then causes many of them to fail. So it's available on Amazon, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. Good. Like I said,
Thank you for mentioning the book. I appreciate it.
I am gonna to get the book and read it. I'm really interested. Again, I'm confident, having known you these years, that there are some nuggets of wisdom in there, and I think it's one of the things, right? That part of the reason that I'm doing this podcast is, I like to describe myself as a lifelong learner, and I think regardless of how long you've been doing this, we can all learn something every day, and
Absolutely.
people who've been doing it, even if they haven't been doing it as long as I have or longer, you can still learn from them. So I'm always looking for sources of knowledge, and I'll give it a read. But most importantly, it's good to catch up. I really appreciate the time this morning. We'll have another conversation when we're not recording, and talk about getting together and all that fun stuff. But I can't thank you enough for your time this morning, Bob.
No, it's my pleasure, Mike. It's always great to see you and to talk to you. And so have a great fourth.
You as well. Thank you,
Yep.
sir.
Enjoy
Stay in
Independence
touch.
Day.